I don't know what the deal is with babysitters in horror movies but it seems like they're always dying off faster than a bunch of camp counselors during machete season. And that's definitely the case in this town, where on a perfectly normal night, a girl was brutally attacked by some random creep in a Grim Reaper mask. And now a few years later, another babysitter just found herself on the chopping block. But this girl's planning a few tricks of her own, and it all ends with a huge twist that you'll never see coming. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the babysitter slayer in Night of the Reaper. This house is about to become a hunting ground. Late one stormy night, we find this babysitter Emily trying to get the kids she's watching to go to sleep. Now once they're in bed, she heads downstairs and puts on some MTV and starts jamming out, which hell yeah. But that's when she hears the garage door opening earlier than expected. Thinking that it must be the parents, she quickly cleans up the mess, but oddly enough, they never walk in. Confused, she peeks outside and goes to check the street, but that was her biggest mistake. Heading back inside, she takes a seat on the couch, only to find the boy's teddy bear sitting next to the TV. Thinking that it's just a prank, she goes back upstairs to his room, but sees that he is still fast asleep. Now worried, she shuts the door and goes to clean up the hall, but that's when the locked door to the parents' bedroom opens all by itself. As she peeks inside, a hooded figure darts past behind her, and when she goes to check on the older sister, she finds the girl with a bandana tied over her mouth. Horrified, she immediately rushes to the telephone, but that's when she notices a figure in a Grim Reaper costume appear on the TV. Looking up, she realizes that there's a camera pointed right at her, but as the girl stands there terrified, the Reaper sneaks up from behind and attacks her with a knife, making one down with 4 more to go. Holy guacamole, Emily. Talk about having the survival skills of a potted plant. Now at first, she thought the parents must have come home early, right? But when she didn't see a car, she decided that it must have been the wind and went outside for a late night stroll. But all this did was leave the garage wide open for the killer to sneak inside. And since 81% of home invasions start at the first floor, that's like the absolute last thing that you'd ever want to do. Instead, she should have given it about 30 seconds for the parents to show up. And then when they didn't, that's when she needed to close the garage door, lock the inside door, and make sure all the other doors and windows were locked up as well. Now, since it's the 1980s, they didn't have cell phones to call each other, but back in the day, parents would always leave a list with a name and phone number of the place that they were going by the household phone, and also the landline of a trusted neighbor or nearby relative. So after locking down the house and closing the blinds so that nobody could see inside, she should have tried calling the parents to see what was up. And if they didn't answer, she could have just called the police before it was too late. At first, she wasn't really sure if there was actually somebody in the house, but when the locked bedroom door opened all by itself, that should have confirmed it. This was a classic diversion that left the killer free to sneak up behind her. So if you want to survive, you have to see through the distraction and look for attacks coming from the opposite direction. But after finding Marina tied up with a bandana, that's when she needed to grab both kids and fall back to one of the bedrooms. Ideally the master bedroom, since it might have a phone. After using heavy furniture to barricade the door and finding anything she could use as a weapon to defend herself, they could use the phone to call for help if the room had one. And if not, just open the window and start yelling as loud as possible out it. If they had to, they could climb out, drop into the yard, and run to the nearest neighbors for help, and then Emily here wouldn't be starring in her own low-budget slasher flick. Alright, I know we're out here battling ghosties and boogans, but the true battle has yet to begin, and listen, you don't want to miss it. That's right, everybody, Ultimate Death Knight is back in Raid Shadow Legends, and I couldn't be more pumped. And if you're a new player, you can get him for free! If you don't know my boy UDK, here's the highlight reel. He takes all the hits for your team, literally. He's like the friend who volunteers as tribute every time. He heals himself just by watching enemies heal. He shields and heals your whole squad. Emotional support skeleton energy. He's a certified menace. He shuts down enemy legendaries with provokes, fears, and debuffs. A real raid MVP. He's useful everywhere. And the best part, he's a free legendary. I mean, that basically never happens. So don't miss this. Download Raid through my link or QR code. Use promo code UDKING and claim Ultimate Death Knight before he disappears again. But listen, Ultimate Death Knight isn't the only major event happening right now. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are still available through November 13th, but you must start by October 30th to collect your champions. Kick off your collection with Michelangelo. Just log in for 7 days to unlock this legendary turtle who spreads debuffs, taunts enemies with trash talk, back and dodges their attacks. Click my link in the description or scan my QR code to get amazing bonuses available only via my link. Right now you'll get 2 free legendary champions and 2 free epics. You will immediately get a huge starter pack with epic Chonoru and reach level 15 to get another amazing epic, Uugo. But that's not all. New players could also pick 1 promo code out of 6 for a legendary of your choice. You can choose between Green Warden Rurark, Alice the Wanderer, Tunarak, Thowlin Foulbeard, Ultimate Death Knight, and legendary Sun Wukong. And come find me in the game under my name, How to Beat, join my clan, the Nyoki Boys. You know! Sometime later, we find this college student, Dina, coming back to town for the first time in a while. As she's walking down the block, she ends up getting jump scared by this dude, Chad, who's always filming people with his camera, and bumps into her old romantic interest, Willis, but she brushes him off and goes back to her own business. Stopping by the pharmacy, she notices the local forest ranger, Elizabeth, in another aisle and stops by the counter to pick up some medicine for her sick father. Meanwhile, the town sheriff is just starting his day when he notices a strange package sitting near the front steps, and what's bizarre is that it has no labels of any kind. Opening it, he's shocked to find a garage door opener hidden inside, and his gut immediately tells him where it came from. Before stopping home, Dina goes to visit her friend Hattie, who stayed back in town to work at her father's business. They're excited to discuss their plans for the weekend, but Hattie mentions that she can't hang out that night because she's supposed to be watching the sheriff's son. She's had her eye on more than just the babysitting job ever since the man's wife tragically passed away, but after tonight, their lives are never going to be the same. The sheriff picks up his assistant, Officer Butch, and heads over to the house where Emily was killed. Confused, the man asks what the hell they're doing there, but the sheriff simply hands him the button and tells him to try it out. And sure enough, the garage door opens. Seeing that his hunch was correct, he explains that he found the button on his porch earlier that morning. Whoever left it there must be trying to send him a message, but without any labels, they have no way of knowing who it came from. Alright, well, there's nothing like waking up to some Zodiac killer before you've even had your morning coffee, right? But now I'm starting to see why the sheriff never solved the case, because he's been screwing up everything right from the beginning. Like Buddy here just picked that mysterious box up with his bare hands, brought it straight inside, and opened it right in his kitchen, because procedure, I guess. Now, even though this takes place in the 80s and DNA testing wasn't as great as it is today, fingerprinting and fiber evidence were standard practice, but he's already destroyed pretty much any chance of finding usable prints, so great job. And with domestic attacks on the rise, suspicious packages were already treated as a serious threat, so with the sheriff being a high-profile person here in town, it's pretty reasonable to think that he could be a target, and by opening the package on his own, he risked the chance of a chemical attack or even an explosion. Now, if he was following protocol, he should have left the package right where it was and learned as much as he could just by looking at it first. He would also want to take some pictures, record the time and date, and look for any shoe prints that his mysterious mail person might have left behind. They can still check for fingerprints on the box and the opener itself, but that's not the only way to find out who sent it. Like, for example, the tape might have a trace of human hair, animal fur, thread fragments, or even microscopic clothing fibers that got stuck in the adhesive. I mean, hey, it could work, right? And it could be used to narrow down where it came from. The box and tape also had to be purchased somewhere, so I would check for any specific brands or product codes that might lead them back to where the killer bought it. And I would even ask the local paper boys and any early risers in his neighborhood if they saw anyone near his house earlier that morning, because in a small town like this one, people notice a lot more than you think. We also can't forget that this person knows where he lives, and he's planning to leave his kid alone with the babysitter all night. So if it were me, I'd tell Hattie to take the night off and have Max spend the night at the station where he would be safe. Dina finally returns to her parents' home where her mother brings her in for a big hug, but something about the place just feels cold and empty. She finds her father in his office watching TV, but when she tries speaking to him, the man doesn't even respond. In the kitchen, her mother mentions that Hattie called and said that it was an emergency, so Dina excuses herself from the table to go and call her back. When the sheriff and Officer Butch get back to the station, the receptionist Dottie says that she found another package on her porch, so the two of them take it back to his office for a closer look. This time they find a VHS tape hidden inside with a label that reads Night of the Reaper. The only way to find out what it means is to watch the tape, so they pop it on the TV and gather around to see what happens. The footage starts out with a shot of another dead dog lying in the forest before cutting over to an unsuspecting man who's sitting alone at a campsite. Just then, the man hears some branches snapping and gets up to check it out. All the while, the stalker keeps watching him from the shadows. Waiting for him to find the dog, the stalker makes another noise just to scare him, and the man turns around to rush back to his campsite. But when he opens the tent, he's shocked to find a camera facing the flap. And as he picks it up, the Reaper suddenly appears right behind him. All of a sudden, the Reaper bashes him over the head with a rock before he even knows what's coming, and the man falls over with blood pouring out of the wound. Too hurt to fight back, there's nothing he can do as the Reaper drags him off screen, and that makes 2 down with 3 more to go. Rewinding the tape, the sheriff points out that the victim was a local guy named Connor Davis, whose body was found in the woods a couple years back. His death was ruled an accident after the autopsy found alcohol in his system, but the sheriff always suspected that there was more to the story, and now it looks like he has his proof. But if they're going to bring the killer to justice, they're going to have to find out who is sending these tapes. Alright, well, that's what happens when you go camping without bringing any meat shields. Now, Connor here got done dirty, but you can tell that he wasn't the smartest cookie because after hearing a suspicious noise, he left the safety of his campsite and started following it deeper into the dark and scary woods. This was probably the worst choice possible because the campsite was his only controlled environment, with the light from the fire, 360-degree visibility, and easy access to like all of his gear. Why would you leave that behind? And as soon as he walked away, he put any potential threat at a major advantage. So instead of going to check it out, he should have stayed at the campsite with his flashlight off, grabbed anything he could use as a weapon, and started listening for any sounds of movement. Remember, the killer wants to catch you off guard, but if Connor immediately went on the defensive, then they might have decided to just move on. And if not, I'd guess he'd have to duke it out, but at least he'd already be ready instead of getting caught by surprise. But now that they've found a second package, this opens up some new leads. They'll still want to check it for all of the same evidence that we mentioned before, but this time the package was addressed to the sheriff, which means that they have a writing sample, and if they compare it to the sample on the tape, they can find out if they're dealing with one or multiple suspects. Now that they've connected Connor and Emily's deaths, they should look for any other connections that they might have shared, like if they had a similar friend group, hung out at similar places, or worked at the same job. And with 2 packages already showing up, there's bound to be a third one soon, so I would tell the deputies to keep an eye out for anyone walking around with unmarked brown boxes. He also saw the killer using a dead dog as a distraction, so he should have his deputies investigate any reports of dead animals that come in, just in case there's some kind of connection. And last but not least, this is the first time they've seen the killer's mask, and it looks like the kind you'd buy from a Halloween shop, so I'd print out a picture of it and take it to all the local costume shops, because if they recognize it, then we might be able to trace it back to the person who bought it. And that's some good old-fashioned 80s frontier justice right there. When Dina calls Hattie to find out what the hell is wrong, the girl explains that she's feeling horrifically sick and needs her to take over babysitting duties for the night. She's not sure if it's the best idea, but Hattie is not taking no for an answer, and promising to pay her back, she eventually convinces Dina to help her out. Meanwhile, the sheriff and Officer Butch are driving out to the crime scene when they come across Ranger Elizabeth cleaning up some roadkill. She explains that stray dogs have been getting hit by cars all month and asks if they can get some speed traps out there to slow people down. This reminds the sheriff of the dog from the Connor Davis case, and now it's starting to seem like there might be some connection, but he still can't see how it all comes together. When they arrive at the crime scene, the sheriff realizes that the footage from the tapes definitely does not match up with the official story, but as he's looking around, he notices something that makes him stop in his tracks. It's another blank package sitting right near the spot where the victim's body was found, as if whoever's doing this wants to show that they're always one step ahead. And sure enough, they find another hidden tape inside with the same label as the first, but this time it starts with a shot of the killer opening someone's garage. It's footage from the night they went after Emily, but the tape cuts off before the attack, leaving Butch confused as to why this one was so much shorter. Playing it back, the sheriff notices a shot of a license plate at the very start of the recording, and he immediately recognizes it belonging to that dude Chad. But the problem is Chad lives on another street, so they decide to go pick him up and find out what he knows. That afternoon, Dina arrives at the sheriff's house and introduces herself to his son, Max. Now, he's a little shy at first, but they quickly start bonding over video games as she gets to know his interests. Back at the station, the sheriff puts Chad in the interrogation room and has Officer Butch speak to him first. The guy is giving them a hard time, and since he was only a minor when the attacks happened, Butch isn't even sure if he could be responsible, but the sheriff has a hunch that he knows a lot more than he's letting on, and points out that Chad here is known around town for always filming everything he does. He's convinced that Chad has something to do with it, but the guy denies having any clue what the hell he's talking about. He either wants a formal accusation or to be let go, but the sheriff leans across the table and grants his wish, calling Chad an accessory to Emily's killing. Alright, the sheriff needs to be careful before he ends up blowing up the whole case. I mean, right now it seems like all he has are Chad's van showing up on the wrong block and the fact that he always has a camera. But that's not enough to arrest him for a crime. I mean, to do that, the sheriff would need strong evidence that actually links Chad to the case, like a murder weapon or some of Emily's personal belongings. Since the sheriff doesn't have enough evidence to make an accusation and Chad's already asked for a lawyer, anything he says from now on will be inadmissible in court, and it could even lead to all charges being dropped if the case is mishandled. So for now, the sheriff's best choice is to let Chad go, but that doesn't mean that they can't keep their eye on him. If a suspect's actually guilty, they'll often try to destroy evidence, contact their partners in crime, or accidentally slip up in some other way once the police start applying pressure. So from the moment Chad leaves, one of the officers should tail him in an unmarked car, keeping a timeline of his actions and noting if he stops at any suspicious places or meets with any shady characters. And if they tail him long enough, he's bound to commit some minor traffic violation, which gives them the perfect opportunity to pull him over and come up with some BS excuse to search his van. No warrant needed. They could legally arrest him and start turning up the heat from that moment. After watching Max play Centipede for hours, Dina eventually gets bored and asks to go explore the rest of the house. It takes some convincing to get him off the game, but she eventually wins him over by promising to give him some candy. He rushes Dina over to the kitchen and shows her where to find the secret stash before leading her off to finish the rest of the tour. In the hall, she notices a door leading down to the basement and decides to have a look inside. It's mostly full of random junk, but there's a box in the corner labeled Abby, and opening it, she finds the wedding dress that belonged to the sheriff's wife. As she turns to leave, she almost crashes straight into a creepy mannequin, but she shrugs it off and follows Max up to the second floor. Upstairs, they pass a picture of the woman on the way to the boy's room, and the kid explains that he and his dad both still miss her very much. Dina helps him feel a little bit better as they move on, but he leads her over to his bedroom where he starts showing her all of his stuff. He's obviously still deeply affected by what happened, but after relating with him over a shared love for baseball, Dina leads the kid back downstairs for some of that candy she promised him earlier. At the station, the sheriff takes Chad's camera and goes to look at what he's been recording, but all he finds is an innocent tape of the guy just messing around with his friends. Worried that they've already crossed the line, Officer Butch says that they should just cut their losses and let Chad go, but the sheriff is still convinced that they're on the right track. Back at the house, Dina and Max decide to play a game of hide and seek, with the babysitter using a walkie-talkie to try and find his hiding place. It doesn't take her long to realize that he's hiding behind the TV, but she pretends like she doesn't notice and starts checking in the opposite direction. Just then, she hears a loud yelp from somewhere in the house and peeks through a door to see a terrifying hooded figure standing just on the edge of the property. The person just stands there as she flicks the porch light on and off, trying to get a better look, but the moment she looks away, they suddenly disappear back into the shadows. Worried, she closes the door and watches through the window until she hears the phone ringing back in the kitchen. It's the sheriff calling to check on his son, and Dina says that they've been having a great time, so he thanks the girl for helping out and promises to check in again in a few hours. Alright, now, I'm sorry, but is nobody gonna talk about the f***ing Grim Reaper that just showed up in the backyard here? Like, the last time that I checked, it's not Halloween, so nobody should be out here trick-or-treating. One of the biggest signs that somebody's up to no good is if they don't run away after being noticed. It's not just creepy behavior, it means that they're watching to see how you'll react and checking for any vulnerabilities in your defenses. Plus, she already knows that a babysitter was recently attacked in this town, so there's no reason to be taking any chances. But before we freak out, first we have to rule out the possibility that it's just Hattie playing a prank. So I would call her up and let her know that I'm about to call 12. and if she still swears that it isn't her, then it's time to call the sheriff back and tell him all about this creepy-ass dude. He'll probably send a car or come to check it out himself, but Dina and Max still have to survive until an officer gets there, so plan A is to grab Max, find a weapon, and make sure they each have a walkie-talkie in case they get separated. Then go around the first floor locking every door and window and turn the inside lights off while leaving the outside lights on, since that would make it harder for the creep to sneak around. The basement also gives them a few interesting options to work with, like the creepy mannequin that I'd put in one of the windows to make it look like somebody's watching. And I would also use those football pads and motorcycle helmets to keep us safe from any hits, scrapes, or slashes. And then it's time to move to a room upstairs where they can climb out the window and get to the driveway. Now hopefully the officer will get there first, but if the creep starts trying to break in, we simply duck out the window, jump in the truck, and get the out of there. Back in the interrogation room, the sheriff goes back to pressing Chad for more info, threatening him with life in prison unless he comes clean. Calling his bluff, Chad says that he won't answer any more questions until he speaks to a lawyer. But since the tape also showed his buddy Willis riding in the van, the sheriff decides to bring him in for questioning instead. In the lobby, Officer Butch tries convincing him to just let it all go and spend the night with his son, but the sheriff is not backing down, and he storms out of the station to go find Willis himself. Meanwhile, Dina and Max are on the couch watching old scary movies, and the kid grabs her hand just like he used to with his mom. When she asks why he likes these old films, he explains that they were his mother's favorite, and they reminded him of what it used to be like spending time with her. Changing the subject, Dina asks if he wants to play more hide and seek, but the kid says that he is not really in the mood. He does mention that she is a lot more fun than Hattie and asks if she'll be coming back again to babysit before falling asleep in Dina's lap. But it won't be long before this quiet night turns into a fight for survival. After a while, Dina brings Max upstairs and puts him to sleep for the night. Once he's tucked in, she goes back to the kitchen and snoops around until she finds the sheriff's booze. But as she's looking for something in the fridge, she hears another yelp from somewhere outside. Pulling aside the curtains, she peeks through the window and stares into the darkness, but that's when she hears the noise once again. Grabbing a flashlight, she rushes outside to go look for the source and ends up finding another dead dog lying just beyond the edge of the trees. She calls out to see if the owner is still nearby, but that's when she hears the front door slamming in the wind. Finally realizing that she could be in danger, she quickly rushes back inside and locks the door, but breathes a sigh of relief when nothing comes chasing after her. Okay, now if one more person walks outside while leaving the door open, I think I'm gonna lose it, because that has to be one of the most idiotic things you could possibly do. And the worst part is, she's already seen a creepy guy out there, so even a total dumbass would have seen this coming from a mile away. But if you're determined to be a moron and investigate the scary noise, then there's 3 things that I'm gonna need you to do. First is bring a flashlight, so at least she already has that option covered. Second is to bring a weapon, just in case some creep decides to ambush you. And third, lock that motherfucking door behind you. That way, the dude can't just waltz inside the minute that you turned your back. The better option would have been to back up, lock the door, get a phone, a flashlight, and a baseball bat, and just post up on the couch until the sheriff gets home, but stay ready to call for help at the first sign of trouble. But just because she made it back doesn't mean that she's safe, because for all we know, this dude could be like already in the house. So the first thing she needs to do is lock all the doors, turn on all the lights, close the curtains, and grab the keys to her truck. Then quickly call the sheriff and let him know what the hell is going on. After that, quietly go up to Max's room and pick up a weapon on the way. Hopefully he's still sleeping in his room, so then they can barricade the door and wait for the sheriff to get home. But they also should be ready to climb out the window and go for the truck if the creep starts trying to get in. Somewhere across town, the sheriff arrives outside of Willis's apartment and tries ringing the doorbell. The man doesn't answer, but it's not long before another resident comes out to walk her dog, and waiting for the woman to pass, he quickly grabs the door and slips inside. As for Dina, she decides to call animal control about the dead dog and asks if they can send somebody to pick it up, but the man says that they won't be able to get out there until the next morning. Feeling anxious, she goes to take another swig of the sheriff's bottle, but that's when she starts hearing loud noises coming from inside the house. It sounds like somebody's dragging things around up on the second floor, but when Dina peeks into the boy's room, she finds Max still sound asleep in the bed. Then she hears a blood-curdling scream coming from somewhere back downstairs, and when she runs to see what happened, she realizes that it was just the TV. She still can't tell if it's all in her head or if she's really in danger, but it's not going to be much longer before she finds out the truth. Back at the apartment building, the sheriff creeps down the hall and picks the lock to Willis's room. Inside, he's alarmed to find a pair of dog collars sitting on the coffee table, but just then he hears a noise from somewhere behind him and decides to check it out. Clearly freaked out, Dina decides to call up Hattie for some reassurance, but that's when she hears more noises coming from the second floor. At the same time, Hattie says there's someone at her door and hangs up the phone as she goes to see who's there. Dina goes to investigate as well, but when she reaches the hallway, the basement door slowly creaks open and she nervously works up the courage to take a look inside. Making her way down one step at a time, she turns on the lights only to find the wife's wedding dress hanging in the middle of the room and immediately goes running back upstairs to the first floor. Meanwhile, the sheriff notices music and a strange red light coming from the room at the end of the hall, and when he pushes it open, he is shocked to find another tape lying on the bed. This is when he spins around to find Willis standing directly behind him, but he knocks the guy out and puts him under arrest before he can get away. Okay, I'm telling you, these two have been the biggest idiots that I've ever seen. Like, let's start with the sheriff first, since once again, he's treating the law like it's just a suggestion. Like, first of all, since he took Chad's camera without consent or a warrant, anything they found on the tape would be inadmissible as evidence, even if they did find something incriminating. But it turns out all they found was just two dudes chilling in a van, and yet, despite having absolutely nothing going on, he decided to start going after Willis anyway. Now, I mean, he could have asked Willis to come in voluntarily, but he had nowhere near enough to detain him or arrest him. And he sure as hell didn't have enough to search the guy's apartment. I mean, to do that, he'd need a valid search warrant signed by a judge. But since he had no warrant, no consent, and no probable cause, everything he did just was blatantly illegal, and anything he found in the apartment can't be used in court, including this new tape. Even if Willis was guilty, he's basically just guaranteed the judge will have to throw out the whole case. And to top it all off, he straight up pistol whipped the guy for no reason in his own apartment. Like, hello, police brutality, anyone? Forget the case. He's going to be looking for several felonies while Willis makes a bag off the lawsuit, and the real killer is still at large. So honestly, I'd take Butch's advice and call it a night before this gets any worse. Then we've got Dina, who somehow still hasn't seen the obvious danger staring her right in the face. Hearing things go bump in the night is one thing, but there's no way this sad little kid would use his mother's wedding dress for a prank. So unless it climbed out of the box on its own, this can only mean that somebody is in the house. And since they haven't struck yet, this is her chance to go upstairs, grab Max, not let him out of her sight again, and then either run to the phone or call the damn police and get ready to make a break for the truck or the nearest neighbor's house, because it's better to get out while they still have a chance than to stick around waiting for this guy to attack them. At the house, Dina rushes to the kitchen and tries calling Hattie, but now her friend is not picking up. Furious, she storms to Max's bedroom and threatens to get him in trouble if he's playing a prank, but it looks like the kid is still fast asleep. As she goes back to the hall, she hears the door to the sheriff's bedroom swing open and carefully pokes her head inside. It looks like nobody's there, but as she's looking out the window, she hears another loud thump from the other side of the house. Passing by the wife's picture, she is shocked to find a newspaper article about the woman's death sitting on the table. Picking it up, she starts running back downstairs, but doesn't make it far before somebody breaks a window, and this time it's coming from the sheriff's office. Horrified, she turns around and goes back to the door, and when she tries the handle, she realizes that somebody unlocked it from the inside. The sheriff returns to the station with Willis in handcuffs, getting there just in time to see Chad being escorted out of the building. Officer Butch tries to explain, but the sheriff goes straight to his office and decides to watch the tape on his own. Turning it on, he watches as the person behind the camera waits by the side of the road until a car comes passing by, only to leap out in front of it and cause the driver to skid into a ditch. As they approach the wreck, he realizes that the person driving was his wife, and there's nothing he can do but watch as the killer smashes her head against the steering wheel, making 3 down with 2 more to go. Like, damn, son. Back at the house, Dina peeks into the sheriff's office and notices that one of the windows was smashed open. On the wall, she finds a giant conspiracy board tying all of the attacks together, and it looks like the sheriff has been obsessed with this case for years. But just then she hears the sound of someone running through the house and finally rushes downstairs to call the fucking police. Okay, alright, now we're finally getting somewhere. The situation has officially escalated into a full-blown home invasion, and based on the fact that there's an active threat inside the crib, this would be classified as a priority 1 call, meaning all available units should respond as fast as they can. But that's the problem. because the sheriff's house seems to be in a rural area on the outskirts of town, so we could still be looking at like 15 to 20 minutes before they show up. Now, whatever this creep's plans are, they made one fatal mistake, because by opening the sheriff's office, they just gave Dina full access to all of his weapons. I mean, if we look at his cabinet, he's got at least 2 boomsticks that would give her a huge advantage in the fight, so I would probably grab the one on the left because it looks like it holds more ammunition, and fill her pockets up with any extra shells that she can find, and then rack the pump as loud as she can to let the intruder know that she's armed and dangerous. Then we go straight to Max's room and hunker down there until the police arrive, while staying ready to bail out the window like we talked about before. If he attacks, all she has to do is blast him and call it a day, but since we don't know what he's armed with, or even if he's alone, it's better to escape if they can and leave direct confrontation as a last resort. Furious, the sheriff barges into the interrogation room and forces Willis up against the wall. The guy swears that he didn't know what was on the tape, but when the sheriff demands to know where the hell it came from, he keeps refusing to spill the beans. And just when he's about to snap, Officer Butch comes running in and pulls him away for an urgent call. The officers all run to their cars and start speeding across town, but instead of going to the sheriff's house, they end up at the pharmacy, where they find a backpack full of empty boxes tucked in the back corner. Back at the house, the killer hears Dina calling for help and charges downstairs, but when they get to the kitchen, it turns out that it was just a recording. Dina comes charging in with a taser and knocks the creep out, revealing that it was a trap all along. When the Reaper finally wakes up, they're surprised to find themselves tied to the chair with footage from Emily's death playing on the TV. After a moment, the footage cuts over to Dina wearing the Reaper's mask, and she explains that she's been onto them since the very beginning. Realizing that she's been caught, the Reaper takes off her mask and reveals that she's actually Ranger Elizabeth. But Dina didn't go through all this trouble just to call 12. The truth is she had Willis take Max over to Hattie's place a long time ago, and instead of calling the cops, she called in a fake report about a suspicious package at the pharmacy, making sure that they would be busy on the other side of town. Stumbling out of her chair, Elizabeth gets up and starts searching the house for a weapon, but Dina's already made sure that there's nothing left for her to find. And all over the house, she's left notes and pictures of her previous victims just to mess with the Ranger's head. Making her way upstairs, she goes to the sheriff's office and picks up a large piece of broken glass, but the gun cabinet's already empty, and that's when she hears Dina calling her through the walkie-talkie. The girl starts tormenting her as she searches from room to room, showing her what it's like to feel hunted by somebody else. As the chase goes on, Dina starts giving her hints as if they're playing hide and seek until the Ranger notices a flashlight coming from the woods. Thinking she's found her, the Ranger storms outside holding the broken glass, but by the time she gets there, Dina has already disappeared. Looking around, she finds herself completely surrounded by Grim Reapers hanging from the trees and discovers that the light was nothing but a decoy tied to a string. Frustrated, she calls Dina over the walkie-talkie, but the moment she turns her back, the girl emerges from the shadows and blasts her straight in the leg. Lying on the ground, Dina reveals that Emily was actually her sister, but just as she's about to finish her off, Chad comes rushing in from behind and smashes Dina across the face with a branch. Stunned, there's nothing she can do as he leans over to knock her out, and the two of them start dragging her back into the house. Alright, now come on, Dina! Did you really just come this far just to get caught slipping by Chad of all people? Well, congratulations, because you just f***ed up. Like, you mean to tell me you knew for how long that Ranger Rick here killed your sister and you decided not to say anything? Well, here's an idea. Maybe you should call 12. Yeah, solving crimes is literally their job, you know? And it's better to at least do things by the book instead of going on this whole vigilante mission. And after all this meticulous planning, you just couldn't resist the urge to monologue, could you? I mean, you had her completely defenseless back in the kitchen, so just take her out. Don't give her a chance to get up and fight back. But now the lady who killed your sister is about to do the same thing to you, and that's how you know you done f***ed up. At the station, the sheriff's at his desk when he gets a call from Officer Butch, who says that they found security footage of the person who left the bag, and it was none other than his babysitter, Dina. Worried, he tries calling the house, but when nobody picks up, he decides to go over there and check for himself. With Dina trapped, the Ranger still believes they can get away with it, but the girl still has a few more tricks up her sleeve. That's when they hear Willis trying to call her over the radio and end up finding a walkie-talkie in Dee's jacket. But when Chad presses the button, the entire thing suddenly explodes and blows his head up like a water balloon, making 4 down with 1 more to go. The blast knocks everyone to the ground, but before the girl can pick herself up, the ranger gets back to her feet and knocks her out once again. This time when she wakes up, Dina finds herself tied to a chair with the tape of Emily's death playing on the TV. Forcing her to watch, the ranger brags about how fun it was to kill her and says that doing the same thing to Dina is going to be even better. Putting on the mask, she takes out the same knife that she used to kill Emily and plunges it straight into Dina's thigh, but she's not about to make this quick. Instead, she takes it out and stabs her in the other leg, saying how she wants her to suffer just like her sister. She's about to go for the killing strike when suddenly the sheriff barges into the house and blasts her straight through the chest. Panicking, he starts looking for his son, but when Dina tells him that the boy is safe, he turns his attention back to the injured ranger, who starts trying to make it seem like Dina was the killer all along. Thinking that she has him fooled, she reaches for the knife and gets ready to lunge, but the moment that she makes her move, the sheriff shoots her in the head with absolutely no hesitation, making 5 down with no more to go. Explaining herself, Dina reveals that she was the one sending the tapes because she wanted the sheriff to know the truth about what happened. He's about to call for backup, but Dina convinces him to help cover it all up instead. That way, they won't have to go to jail for what they've just done. They're able to set the whole thing up so that everyone knows what Elizabeth did, but he makes sure that the woman's body was never found. In the end, that makes 3 victims and 2 killers down, and although it's bittersweet, they can finally rest knowing they got revenge for their families. But if there's a lesson to be learned here, it's that sometimes the only way to beat the villain is by becoming one yourself. Night of the Reaper. Happy Halloween, everybody. You know, movies like this only come around once in a while. They're very special. I mean, sheesh. Due to the nature of the show, surely we couldn't have covered every possible scenario, so if there's something that you guys have thought of that the characters should have done differently, you need to let me know what that is down in the comments below. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out that How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring today's video. Click on the link in the description to download the game.